Hi, True Avatars, and welcome to your weekly queer video game podcast. This is episode 55, and I am your host, Zoe Wild. I am a transgender and bisexual woman, and my pronouns are she, her. So, for the first half of this week's episode, it's just gonna be me, and I mean, it's probably not gonna be considered, actually half of this episode. For audio listeners, I'm doing, air quotes, because I think I'm probably gonna blow through what I've been playing and the news. And that'll be the first section of the episode. And of course, when it's just me, I'll be talking about what I've been playing, which is 2 games. One of those is called 3 Days to Chicago, which is super exciting because in the second half of the episode, I will actually have on a very special guest. The developer behind that game is joining me, and that developer is called Chris Schroyer. He is the game's creator, and he's going to be talking about 3 Days to Chicago, his views on game development, and what he calls attainable fantasy, as well as his storied career, which includes several years at Telltale Games as a producer and games designer. So stick around for that part of the episode, which is what I'm calling the second half, but it'll probably be about half an hour in or so, roughly. Obviously I don't know as I'm recording this now, but judging by how fast I usually go through the news when I'm on my own, that is the case. Also, it's nice to just take a quieter week when just me, because it is Thanksgiving weekend here in Canada. I'm a little exhausted. I've been scootering to work in the cold, and I think it got to me. So yesterday I had a bit of a cold, actually. I was worried it was going to get worse, but I actually got some sleep, which is rare for me. I usually don't get much sleep. So, anyway, yeah, so, also, I didn't really talk about what the headlines are going to be. So there's not that many this week, thankfully. It's been a slower week. It's been a busy year, so it makes sense that the game industry is slowing down a little bit, but a character from the Fallout TV show is joining Fallout 76. Minecraft 2 is coming, depending on how you feel about that. I definitely have my own thoughts. There were more layoffs, 2 different rounds / companies, and Fortnite has officially skipped Pride this year. And I'm sure you're thinking oh, well, June was months ago. Of course they officially skipped Pride, but, we'll get into that actually, a little bit later. So before I jump into everything, what I've been playing, the news, the interview with Chris, I do have a few quick favors to ask of you, True Avatars. I know I ask this every episode, and I'm going to continue asking. If you like this podcast, please leave a comment, rating, or review on your preferred podcast platform. Spotify has ratings and comments, while Apple has reviews. Engagement like comments, ratings, and reviews helps to grow the podcast, and a growing podcast means a happy podcast host, that's me, who is forever happy and fulfilled that you enjoy listening to her show, which creates an infinite feedback loop of more podcast episodes and more growth and more happiness. So please go leave a comment, rating, and or review. If you're watching the video version on YouTube, please like this episode, leave a comment, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell, so you're the first to know when a brand new episode or a video drops. Also, please follow True Avatars, a queer video game podcast, on social media. There are accounts on Blue Sky, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Facebook, and TikTok at True Avatars, and you can also find the podcast on the official website, trueavatarspodcast.com. No spaces. And remember, this is a weekly queer video game podcast, so check in every week. I'm going to bring you news, interviews, and updated discussions that are relevant to queer gamers. So you have a safe space to check in on the world of gaming from a 2SL LGBTQIA+ lens. And that's why I never say the acronym every time, because I always stumble through it. Alright, let's jump into what I've been playing. So, first off, before I get into 3 Days of Chicago, I'm going to just quickly talk about Super Mario Galaxy on Switch 2, because they recently, as some of you may know, and I did talk about this in a previous episode, but Nintendo did bring Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 to the Nintendo Switch, and with a 4K enhancement patch with, I think, 120 FPS, I'm not sure. I'll talk about why I don't know the answer to that in a second, but they brought it to Switch and Switch 2, and, either last week or the week before, I can't remember, I was talking about the fact that I've been playing it, actually, and I found the game to be a bit, I guess there's some input lag when you play it docked. I guess there's, just the 4K resolution boost really doesn't do any favors to the updated textures, which don't look amazing, if I will admit. And also, just in general, having played Astrobot last year, this feels like an older version of Astrobot. I know this Astrobot was inspired by Mario Galaxy, and I've played Mario Galaxy as recently as 2020, and I love this game. It's amazing. But playing through it again, it just felt very dated, a little slow, just clunky to play, I guess. Anyway, so I was talking about that before, and I actually decided to try playing it in handheld mode on my Switch 2. And you're probably thinking, okay, this game doesn't translate well to handheld mode given the like motion controls, right? But when you're playing in handheld mode, you don't have to disconnect the Joy-Cons. You can actually use the screen with the Joy-Cons attached as a gyro, and I actually kind of really enjoy it. First off, you're playing in 1080p, which means you're not gonna see all those like cracks in the textures and stuff like that. So it actually looks very nice to play, and it feels great with the gyro. It took a couple seconds to kind of get used to it, but it actually feels really great to play in handheld mode. I can't explain it, but that's how I've been playing it. I haven't docked it since. And every time I pick it up to play for like a level or two, I end up playing like way longer than I should. Which is not great for someone like me who's bad at time management. But I've been really enjoying it. I sat there and I played, like this morning even, I played through a bunch of levels. So, I'm really enjoying it. The only time I had an issue playing in handheld mode, and I had to like detach the Joy-Cons and put the screen in my lap, is that there's one mechanic where Mario sticks to like this like sticky tree looking thing. I'm not sure if there's an official name for it, and you have to pull back on Mario and launch him to the next sticky thing through these levels. Again, I know this predates Astrobot, but like these are challenge levels that feel very similar to the Astrobot challenge levels. So if you've played Astrobot recently and you haven't played Mario Galaxy, there's a lot to love in this game that is more of the same to an extent. Anyway, so this level, it was really hard with the screen and the gyro because for some reason, like the way it was working, like I couldn't launch Mario in the direction that I wanted to precisely. And it requires like very like precise accuracy when doing this challenge level. Anyway, so I detached the Joy-Cons, I put the screen in my lap, and I found it much easier to play that way. But then as soon as I was done those levels, I put the Joy-Cons back on and I played as normal, and it was great. The only thing I will say about Mario Galaxy that actually is dated playing in handheld mode that I don't like is the fact that there are lives in the game. Every modern platformer these days does not have lives. I'm pretty sure Mario Odyssey didn't have lives either. I'm not 100% sure on that. Do not quote me. Just add me in the comments calmly, explaining if I'm right or wrong. It's been a while since I played Mario Odyssey. Actually, I played it this year, and I don't remember if they had lives or not. I feel like it didn't, though. I feel like I would have been like, oh, Mario Odyssey is great, except this one thing. And it's just lives. It's just kind of like, why? Like, I don't know. It doesn't feel like a challenging thing to add difficulty, like, with lives. And obviously, game makers have realized this in the years since, because there's no such thing as lives in a lot of platformers and just a lot of games in general. There's just checkpoints, and you reset to the checkpoint. Even if that checkpoint is far away, like in Silksong. But what really bothers me is that Nintendo, when they updated these games, they didn't kind of take out, I know it would be hard to do, but it's just a little frustrating that there's still lives in the game. There should at least, I know there's like an assist mode that like basically makes it so like you don't die, but it'd be really cool if, instead of having, like giving you an option basically to have unlimited lives, like outside of the assist mode, like just make it toggleable where you have unlimited lives, and like when you find a life mushroom in the level, like maybe just like nothing happens, or you get like an extra coin or something. I don't know. It would be really nice though if I didn't have to like worry about it, because like Pac-Man World 2 Repack, actually, which I have been playing as well, although not this week so much, also has lives, but there's so many lives in this game. It's very easy to rack them up. So, yeah, it's just, that's the only thing that I don't actually like about the game playing in handheld mode. Handheld mode fixes all the problems I have with the docked mode. And again, it's obviously 60 FPS in handheld mode. I don't think the Switch 2 in handheld mode can run that game in 120 FPS, but I think there's 120 FPS in the docked mode. Again, I could be wrong. You can at me down in the comments calmly, obviously. But yeah, so. Anyway, Mario Galaxy 2, or Mario Galaxy 1. I was gonna play Mario Galaxy 2, but I thought, you know what, I'll just jump into Mario Galaxy 1 to see how it is, and now I'm just gonna play through Mario Galaxy 1, and the way I'm playing it right now is 100%ing it. So I'm probably gonna get every star. So I'm gonna play through Mario Galaxy 1, and then I'm gonna jump into Mario Galaxy 2, because the one time I did dabble in Mario Galaxy 2, I didn't like that there's no hub world. I really don't like, I mean, in 3D World, I got used to it, so, I know they kind of made it more like classic Mario, where you're just kind of going through like this very like linear hub world of sorts, where you're just kind of like, oh, here's the next level, here's the next level, here's the next level, and you progress in a linear fashion. So yeah, I'm curious about Mario Galaxy 2, because I feel like once I get past the fact that it's very linear, I will probably very much enjoy it, because I've only heard very good things about it. I never got around to playing it. So anyway, that's Mario Galaxy 1. I've also been playing this game called 3 Days to Chicago, which I actually heard about at QGCon, which is the Queerness in Games conference that I went to a couple weeks ago. You can go back to episode, I believe it's 53, and hear about all my thoughts on that and my experiences there. I highly recommend that you go back and check that out because it's awesome. I hope that whenever they have another conference, I don't think it's going to be next year, but whenever their next conference is, I will be there because it was awesome. And so at this conference on the first day, I was kind of interrupted during it because, as I mentioned, someone entered my Airbnb, which was not fun. They just like walked right in without knocking. They just unlocked the door and like came in. They're like, I need to check something. And I'm like hell you do. Anyway, while I was interrupted though, I was watching this conference, this talk basically from Chris Schroyer, who developed this game 3 Days to Chicago. And 3 Days to Chicago is basically a game that was created through what we call, or what devs call, a train jam. Basically developing a game on a train. And so Chris took this train ride from from San Francisco to New York and documented it with pictures and all kinds of stuff. And a lot of this stuff ended up in the final game. So it's a visual novel about this character called Aaron, who has recently gone through a breakup after being in a relationship for 5 years. Aaron is also dealing with stress at work. Aaron is also a game developer, so it's semi-autobiographical on Chris Schroyer's part, or at least very heavily inspired. And so Aaron is also dealing with boundaries at work and like just being overworked. So they want to take a vacation. And as soon as you get on this train in this visual novel, your boss is calling you saying like, oh, I need you to like get on the phone with me right now. We need to solve this problem at work. Like this game, they just made layoffs and we need to talk about like, and of course making these like very empty promises of saying like, well, if you help us through this launch, maybe there's a promotion in it for you. But if you don't help us, like we're going to like basically destroy your career. This isn't all said, but it's all kind of a read between the lines thing. And so I'm a freelancer, so I don't have issues with a lot of boundaries with my employers, in air quotes again. Because I'm a freelancer, so like I set my own boundaries. But I have worked in places where it felt like that. And I am in an industry right now that is not seeing layoffs so much, but is seeing a lot, like the encroaching use of AI. So when I was playing this game, I saw a lot of parallels between like me and Aaron. And despite this game being about gay men, Aaron is a gay man. And this game is also about bear representation. And bears, if you don't know, in the LGBTQ plus community, are larger men, hairier men that are gay. And you don't see a lot of bear representation in video games. So that was one thing that Chris, when he developed this game, was trying to encapsulate, was some bear representation. So on its surface level, like this doesn't sound like something that I would relate to as a bisexual trans woman. But Aaron's story feels very similar to what I am experiencing right now. Aaron is in his late 20s. Possibly early 30s. I'm in my early 30s right now. So, it just feels like a point in my life where like, I'm on the cusp of maybe the next chapter of my life, but I'm not sure what it is or how to get there yet. I just got out of a long-term relationship. I'm not sure about my job. Obviously, things at my job are up in the air because of the encroaching use of AI, in Aaron's case, because of layoffs and just like boundaries from his boss. So anyway, this game takes place over 3 days, obviously, and you're on the train. It's a visual novel. You're taking a trip from San Francisco to Chicago. And on the train, Aaron meets a friend. And this friend is named Paul. And Paul can be anyone you want Paul to be. If you want Paul to be romantic, sensual, I'm using that word in place of others, obviously, to avoid YouTube issues. Paul can just be like a friend. It can be long term. It can be just like a one-time thing, like a one-night stand. And the choices are up to you in this game. But it's very contemplative. It's very conversational. It is very, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way because this was used by Chris in his presentation at QGCon to describe it, but it's very mundane. And I think what I needed in this game right now was something a little bit more mundane, something a little bit more contemplative. And it also does let me to live what Chris calls attainable fantasy, like things you can do in real life, like not fantastical, like killing orcs or, fighting dragons or, traveling through space. Like you're just like on a train. You're a person who's stressed with work. going out to Chicago to visit a friend. And there's a bunch of times in the game where you're kind of prompted to like figure out how you want to handle your boss. And in a previous episode, I also talked about how when I was playing Quality Dreams Reasonably Priced, which is another amazing visual novel, how when I was engaging with my character's boss in that game, I kind of submitted to that boss and I interacted with that boss in a way that I would with a boss in real life, which is just kind of give that boss whatever they want. They're in charge, they're paying you, give them whatever you want. But when you're on a vacation and there's like kind of like these like unspoken boundaries of like, don't bother me, F off, like go away. Right. So when this boss engages with me in the game prompts you with like, how do you want to handle this? Do you want to kick the can down the road? Do you want to give in? Do you want to tell the boss to like, you know, F off or whatever? And so I was thinking about, you know, how I wanted to handle this boss, because in Quality Dreams was Reasonably Priced, I did try playing that game as if I would in real life, which is to say I gave, and the boss character in Quality Dreams Reasonably Priced's name is escaping me, but I did, you know, give that person whatever they wanted. So in this game, I actually did try, you know, telling that boss to, you know, at first I tried kicking the can down the road, and at the end I kind of quit my job. Spoilers. But it gives you that choice. I also don't think it's a major spoiler to say that, because the game prompts you with a bunch of choices and you can go a bunch of different ways about the game. There's a lot of branching paths, as there are in most visual novels. But the game is very queer in every sense of the word. There's a lot of queer commentary and discussion. There's a lot of, color commentary about cities like New York and Chicago and San Francisco and cities in between too. It has a beautiful visual style. So I mentioned that the game is all pictures the whole way through. Pictures that Chris took on his journey in the train jam. So everything is like real pictures, but it's got this nice visual style where everything is kind of blue and red, like oversaturated and like brought down to these two simple tones, red and blue. It sounds like it's kind of, at first I saw it and I was like, this is really pretty, but I wonder if this will get tiresome after a while. Not tiresome like you're tired of seeing it, but just like, it's so strongly visual, like the colors are so strong and bright, you might just like literally actually like your eyes might be like, oh, this is too much and it's too overwhelming. But I never felt that the whole game. I actually, every time there was a new picture with a new color, with this color palette, I was very excited to look at it. Everything was very pretty. The writing is very beautiful. It's very down to earth and raw and realistic. It's not, you know, there's not like complicated words or complicated ideas. It's just a guy on the train, honestly. And even if you're a trans woman, I know early in my transition, a game like this I probably wouldn't have played because I would have been like in the shoes of a man. And I would have just been like shying away from it. But I think if you're in your 20s or your 30s and you've either just entered the workforce or you're just settling into the workforce, after finishing college, even if you're a woman or a trans woman, like anyone, I think, even if you're cishet, like you could play this game and get something out of it, because it does speak to like, and even if you're older too, like if you've been in your career for a long time, you know, and you're just kind of thinking to yourself, like, I don't know what I want to do with the rest of my career. This game kind of like gives you a chance to not only role play the fantasy of like quitting your job and escaping, or not quitting your job and keeping it and deciding where, like trying to see where that goes. But it basically asks the questions. It doesn't give you the answers, but it asks the questions. And so it was just nice to be able to play this game. And it's a very short game. I think it took me, I want to say anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. I didn't log my playtime. I'm sure I could go check on Steam, but I didn't. But it's a short game. It's only meant to be about 2 hours or so. And I bought it during the Steam Autumn sale. It wasn't on sale during that sale. I didn't even check if it's ever been on sale, but the game is only, $6.40 Canadian or $6.50 Canadian, which is $5. It's very cheap. Like if you're interested in this game, there's like almost no excuse. Obviously, $5 is too much for you. If there's going to be a sale, wait for it. Obviously, don't spend money you don't have or aren't comfortable spending. But as far as video games go, this is like very cheap. We're talking about how Silksong was very cheap recently. I also think this is a very good price for a very amazing visual novel. One you could play multiple times if you wanted to and get a different ending each time. I know the ending I got, which I won't spoil too much here, because like really the ending of the game isn't so much the quitting your job thing. Like that's not the crux of it. It's the relationship with Paul. And obviously reaching Chicago. So, as I was saying earlier, the game takes place over 3 days. The first day is like you're on your way through the mountains getting through the Rockies, and then like halfway point on the second day, and then the third day is just as you're reaching Chicago. So that's the premise of the game. That's what you're doing. There's lots of little neat things in there. As someone who's been to San Francisco very briefly, I, was able to recognize some details and things that were mentioned in there. There also is some very beautiful music, also composed by the game's developer, Chris. I highly recommend this game. I really do. I thought it was amazing. It didn't give me the usual role-playing, like a man and getting gender dysphoria kind of thing. I just found it, like, I was so immersed in, like, the mental aspect of it, the psychological, like, consideration of my place in life and Aaron's place in his life. So, anyway, I really recommend this game. I thought it was, really something special, and I'm very excited to see where Chris goes next. And of course, I have Chris's interview coming up too, so I'm going to pick his brain about this game and his career. So if you have or have not played the game and you're very interested in this interview, please go check it out. I did record it yesterday. There is a minor spoiler in it. I do flag it, so you can skip ahead 30 seconds to a minute to avoid that spoiler. Although I don't really think, despite there being spoilers, you can't really spoil the game. It's really more, this is one of those games where, and this is cliche, but it's more about the journey than the destination. You're not trying to get to Chicago. You are trying to figure out your life on the path to Chicago. So anyway, that's what I've been playing, that's Mario Galaxy 1 on my Switch 2 and 3 Days to Chicago on Steam. And I think that's the only place it is on Steam. Alright, Travatars, let's jump into the news. So, the first headline is that Fortnite has officially skipped Pride this year. And again, I mentioned earlier, and you're probably thinking like, okay, but Pride was in June. So like, why is it official now? And so, yeah, Pride Month in June came and went in Fortnite, and there's no sign of their Rainbow Royale, which is what they normally do. I think they've had it every year since 2021. I have played Fortnite a total of... Actually, did I ever play it, or did I just watch someone play it? I can't even remember. I think I watched my brother play it once at like a Christmas thing or something. I don't know. I don't even know if I picked up a controller and played it once, or if I just like watched someone, like if I just watched him play it. Anyway, it's not really my thing. My thing was Rocket League. I played a lot of Rocket League, which I don't think ever had any Pride stuff, although you could customize stuff to be Pride-like, so that's what I did. There's a funny story there that I will tell in a future episode, I'm sure. It's not a long story, but anyway. Rainbow Royale, which is in Fortnite, it's usually sometime during the summer, and it's not always during Pride Month, and it usually just consists of free cosmetics. It's not like a huge thing. It's just kind of like the subtle thing for people who want some, rainbow-themed cosmetics. And so this article comes from GameSpot, not to be confused with GameStop. And they wrote, Epic has since responded with a spokesperson saying, we missed the Rainbow Royale window while we focused on shipping other activations and modes. End quote for the spokesperson, but continuing the article here. It's unclear if, beyond what Epic said, the decision to skip Pride is the result of the new Trump administration's bigoted attempts to eliminate diversity and inclusion efforts in the United States. We have no idea whether Epic skipped its Pride events because leadership agrees with the administration's queerphobic policies, if it just wants to avoid any controversy that might fire up the right, or if there's some other reason entirely. It could be all the above, honestly. A little sad. Obviously, like, even though it wasn't a major thing, the fact that queer people were getting anything at all in Fortnite as representation is a good thing. And so seeing it gone, I know RuneScape, I talked about this in a previous episode, I don't remember which episode that was, but I'm sure if you search True Avatars and RuneScape, it will come up. But I know I did talk about how RuneScape did the exact same thing this year, and the CEO said something to the effect of, it's my responsibility to, like, make sure that, like, we don't deal with any issues arising from having Pride in the game. Whether that's just corporate speak for we didn't want to deal with it, or it's corporate speak, or it's like corporate speak for basically like, hey, we really didn't want to get RuneScape targeted by the alt-right, which is now basically just the right. But anyway. So it's really sad that this is happening, and I have a feeling it's not going to get better as long as the Trump administration is around. I won't get too deep into it because this isn't a wholesome podcast, but I do try to keep it light and generally positive. Obviously that's not always possible, but I do try to keep it on the lighter side. So I won't talk about too much what my real thoughts are on everything happening. and what might happen. But basically, yeah, I don't think this is going to improve too much next year. Although I do think if game studios really wanted to include Pride stuff, it would be a really cool act of rebellion. Because it's not really, everyone goes on about free speech, but no one really exercises that right to free speech except the people that want to silence other people's free speech. So, if you're a game developer and you are considering including Pride stuff and maybe leaning towards not doing it and you're listening to this podcast somehow, please include it. It means a lot to what is a small chunk of the population, although it is a bigger chunk of the population than it's ever been before. So, remember, and like also there's as we know from the, oh my gosh, I can't even remember, but if you go back to episode, I want to say 15, we did a whole episode on the stats of how many queer people actually play video games compared to the general population. And we found out that most people don't care about queer not that they don't care, but queer representation in games doesn't faze them. They're like, if it's in there, cool. If it's not, whatever. But also, I think it's something in the range of either 15, 20, or 25% of all gamers are queer. I'm just going to take a sip of water here. So, remember that, like, yeah, we might only be, like, a small percentage of the population, but, like, 20% or so of gamers. So, like, remember that there's a lot of us playing your games. And it does feel nice to have that stuff in the game, even if it's, like, kind of easy to chuck to the side. Not having it feels more of a message than including it at all. It says to me that you don't care about us. So when it's in there and we like can easily like just kind of forget about it, like, yeah, like obviously it feels a bit thankless, like if no one's engaging with that queer content, but when it's not there, it feels intentional and it feels worse than including it at all and forgetting about it. So anyway, that's my piece on that. The next headline is one that I personally have no investment in, but I know a lot of people do, and that's that the movie is getting a sequel. I don't even know if it's actually formally called Minecraft 2, but the teaser poster, which you can look up online, I don't think I can include it in the show notes. I'll probably include a link to the image if I remember to do that. It's basically two of the Minecraft like axes, and they're kind of like upside down together, and they form like a 2 with the 2 handles. And that's basically it. It's also sitting on like a 9x9 grid looking thing. I don't know what that means. I've never played Minecraft in my life. I've never touched Minecraft. I've watched a few clips, but it's not really my jam. I like single player games that are very like, that have like a path to follow. It doesn't have to be a linear game, but just like an overarching like objective. Sandbox games, if I'm going to play a sandbox game, there has to be something I can come back to as like a linear narrative, like a Zelda or a Mario, like with open world stuff. So, anyway, they did drop the teaser poster. It's coming July 23rd, 2027, which is the same day as the new Simpsons movie, which also just got announced. I feel like, obviously The Simpsons is more of an adult thing and Minecraft is more of a kid's thing, but I think as Minecraft's audience grows up, you're going to see a lot of overlap between the people that want to watch a Simpsons movie and want to watch a Minecraft movie. I could be wrong. Simpsons could be an entirely older generation, like millennials and up, that are watching The Simpsons. I don't know. I'm not a Simpsons fan. I have a coworker that keeps trying to get me into The Simpsons, and I've tried in the past. It's just not for me. I have nothing against it. When I was really littler than I should have been, I watched a lot of Family Guy, and I went back to it recently, and I did have no real positive opinions about it. So, anyway, Jared Hess, the director, is returning. I'm not sure if this is going to get filtered out, but my dog is barking as well. Olive, come here. I don't know if she's going to come. She seems very angry that there's a dog outside my apartment door. Jared Hess, the director of the first movie, is returning. Again, I've only ever seen one Jared Hess movie. Hey, come on. All right, I'm going to try to lift her. I don't know if she's going to go for this, but I'm going to try to lift her up. So if you're on the video podcast, you can see Olive. Come here, sweetie. Come here, baby. Okay, I know. She's not going to like this too much, but here we go. Olive, say hi to the podcast audience. Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to hold her for a bit while I talk about Minecraft. So if you're listening to the podcast, come to the YouTube version. Yes. And check out Olive, my doggy. So there's no plot details. Jared Hess is coming back as director. So this is what the point I was trying to make. I've only seen one Jared Hess movie, Napoleon Dynamite. It's fine. Not really my Huge cup of tea. I haven't seen the Minecraft movie. I probably will at some point check it out, at least for the purposes of the podcast, so I can talk about it, because I'm sure there will be Minecraft 2 news over the next couple of years as the movie gets made. But I do want to prompt my audience, especially now that you're here looking at Olive. Jump down to the comments and leave a comment. What do you want to see from Minecraft 2? Tell me about it. Tell me why I should watch Minecraft 1 if it's something that you're passionate about. I don't have any issues with Minecraft. It's just not my cup of tea. I'm not judging you if you like it either. So like, just because I don't play or watch something doesn't mean it's because I think it's beneath me. It's just not my cup of tea. And I think if you enjoy something, you should enjoy it. Insofar as it's not hurting anyone else, of course. All right. I'm going to try to scroll here through my news. Sweetie. Oh, she seems okay. You're okay. Here's my pups. Okay. So the next section is unfortunately layoffs. Hopefully a dog being on screen will make these easier to swallow. But 3 years ago, Funcom bought a studio called The Outsiders. They're the developer of a game called Metal Hellsinger, which is actually a game I feel like I heard about when it first got announced, but then I forgot about, unfortunately. But it's a really cool rhythm game crossed with a first-person shooter. I love rhythm games, but not first-person shooters, so this is not something I'll probably check out, but does sound really cool. If that's something that interests you, you should go check out Metal Hellsinger. But guess what? Funcom chewed them up and spat them out, and they're closing the studio, unfortunately. So there won't be a Metal Hellsinger 2 unless somehow the studio gets saved, although I don't think there's any talk about that happening, unfortunately. And also, another sad thing here is that the studio behind Hyper Light Drifter and Solar Ash is cutting staff. So the article from VGC is not clear if Hyper Light Breaker, which is in early access, is ending development because it's not being as well received on Steam, or if it's because they naturally reached the end of development. But either way, staff are being cut because they won't be in full development on the next game for the time being. Again, I don't really know the full politics and financials behind why studios need to cut staff in between game development. I'm sure there's some logic to it where it's like, we don't need all these people, so we're going to cut them instead of paying them. But I visited, Zoe Straw's studio, recently, and they are in between games and they have not cut any staff. I don't know how that works. I don't know why that is. I didn't ask. I was just happy to be there. But it is sad when staff gets cut in between games. And, again, I hope Hyper Light Breaker makes its full release. I don't know what this means for Hyper Light Breaker. But I know there's a lot of fans of Hyper Light Drifter and Solar Ash out there. And so, I'm sorry to both the devs and the fans that this is happening. And again, I hope everyone being laid off this week is also going to land on their feet. Although, I don't know. I don't know what the state of the industry is in terms of all these layoffs and where people are actually landing after the fact. So, because there's no articles published about where devs are ending up later. So this next article, again, another game I don't play is World of Warcraft. But I know a lot of queer people do. So if you pre-ordered the World of Warcraft Midnight expansion, or if you're going to pre-order it before December, you can play the housing DLC early. And I think that's a terrible way to describe it as housing DLC, because housing is its whole own issue in the real world, but there is a housing sim mode coming to World of Warcraft as part of the Midnight expansion, which I think the Midnight expansion is supposed to come out early 2026, and the housing content will be considered early access, despite being a pre-order bonus, so it's possible it won't feature complete. It won't be feature complete, or it'll be rough around the edges when it comes out in December, but this comes from IGN, and I'm going to quote the article here. Players can pick a spot for their house in one of a number of different themed spaces within their neighborhood. For Alliance players, that includes spaces such as a farm, an autumnal forest, I've never known how to pronounce that word, but basically an autumn forest, a coastal plain, and right next to the local graveyard. For Horde players, options include areas themed after the Red Rocks of Durotar, the Plains of Mulgore, an Oasis, and more. And if I butchered those names, I am so sorry. Again, I've never played World of Warcraft. Some houses are clustered close to others, while others are spread apart, and you can either join a public neighborhood with strangers, or a private one with members of your guild or in-game community. How are we doing, Olives? How are we doing, pups? How are we doings? Yeah, those are good pups. Okay. So that's World of Warcraft. Again, I don't play it. Again, I don't judge anyone who does. It's just when World of Warcraft was really big, I didn't have a PC that could run it. And again, I'm a Pokemon girly. That's where I spent most of my time as a kid, was I bought every version of every Pokemon game. I finished Pokemon Pearl, I went and bought Pokemon Diamond. That's what I saved my money up for, and that's what I played, and I didn't even do a lot of the multiplayer stuff in Pokemon. I mostly just kept to myself. I was a pretty lonely kid. So, yeah, if I ever seem like that's why I try to get guests on too that have played a lot of different games, so they can talk about them too. So hopefully, maybe at some point on, I can get someone on who's played World of Warcraft, especially when the DLC does come out. We can maybe talk about that too, if I can find someone. No promises, of course, but if I do find someone. And this is my last news article here. Walton Goggins is coming to Fallout 76, and Walton Goggins is the actor that plays the ghoul, in the Fallout TV show, which I can actually now watch because I had to get Prime recently. So I should be able to actually watch Fallout now. But anyway, so the ghoul is coming to Fallout 76. It's part of the Burning Springs DLC, which is the biggest map ever added to the game, and it's coming in December. So lots of DLC stuff for games coming in December for queer games. So that's pretty cool. It actually looks pretty cool. There's like a trailer, or screenshots at least. So you can go check those out, and that comes in December. I guess that's time to launch with the TV show, which I think is coming out in December as well. Can't remember if it's this December or next December. I should probably look that up, but I'm exhausted. And also, I just didn't have that for the notes. In fact, I actually forgot that the second season was coming until it's gotta be coming this year, right? It's gotta be coming this year. Anyway, that is basically all the time I have for news this week. I'm gonna go probably take all of, I'm not gonna say the word because as soon as she hears it, but it's, we're going for a W. So, anyway, if you've made it this far into the show so far, thank you for joining me, and I hope you'll stick around for the next segment, which after this musical interlude, after this short break, I will be back on with Chris Schroyer, the creator and developer behind 3 Days to Chicago. Hi, True Avatars, and welcome back from the break. Joining me is a very special guest for a very special interview, Chris Schroyer. Chris, or Schroyer as he is called, is a gay man whose pronouns are he, him. Hi, Chris. Thanks so much for joining me today. How are you?
We're doing great. It's a lovely Friday afternoon here, so there's nothing wrong with that.
How's your weather there?
More of that. I'm in Washington State, so we're getting the first signs of autumn. So I'm cool. Living my Gilmore Girlsian dreams right now, and coffee hits just that much better. So yeah. It's nice.
That's great. Is it still nice temperature wise there? Because it's starting to get cold here in Toronto.
It's not too cold. It's just the first reminder that seasons will happen. And I've been living in Southern California for a really long time, so this is my first time seeing autumn in a good long while.
That's fair, yeah. Your game is set in San Francisco, so I was thinking that's where you were. And when I was there in November, it was summer there. The leaves were still green. It was really warm. I was very confused.
Yeah, San Francisco has 2 weeks of summer that happens sometime between late September and early November. And it's also the only time out of the year where you're I really wish this place had an air conditioner, but it just doesn't. I mean, I'm making San Francisco sound absolutely terrible. It's a beautiful, awesome city. It's just,
I love it. It's just very expensive.
Heat snap. It's so crazy.
Okay, well, for anyone who might not know, Chris has had a very storied career as a senior producer and designer in the video games industry. He's held roles at Nspace, Telltale Games, Jam City, Endless Entertainment, and more, and currently owns and runs his own consulting firm for game production and design. Some notable games he's worked on include, and this is a bit of a list, The Walking Dead Season 1, The Wolf Among Us, Tales from the Borderlands and New Tales from the Borderlands, Batman the Enemy Within, WWE 2K22, Silent Hill Ascension, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 for the Nintendo Wii, and the Nintendo DS versions of Star Wars The Force Unleashed, Call of Duty 4, Hannah Montana the Movie, and Toy Story 3. Once upon a time, he even wrote articles for a now-defunct queer gaming website, gaygamer.net, including that there because I nerded out about that the most, because you did what I'm doing now, and I think that's really cool.
Wow, that's a list, and I'm having so many flashbacks simultaneously. Wow.
Well, thank you for the amazing LinkedIn page with very detailed, because my LinkedIn page has nothing on it.
Yeah, no, that's quite a list. I'm really proud of the work that I've been able to do, and a lot of the extremely grateful for the opportunities and collaborators that I've had over my lovely career in games here. It's been super fun. I've done a little bit of everything along the way, but I've mostly gravitated towards production and narrative design at this point. And those feel like my right places to be. Feels
you're feels
at home there.
Well, today we'll be talking about some of your career, but I'd actually like to hone in on your own video game project, 3 Days to Chicago, which was released a couple years ago, and you absolutely must check it out, listeners and audience, if you haven't before. I'll link the Steam page down in the show notes, and if you're just tuning in, I talked about my time with the game at the beginning of the show, so please go back and listen to that if you haven't yet. But Chris, just to, or do you prefer Schroyer?
Either or works for me. Let's go with Chris, because I'm the only Chris in this room.
Perfect. So Chris, what's your favorite video game?
That's going to be one of those things that changes all the time, but usually in the top 3, it's some order of Super Mario Brothers 3 for NES, Shadow of the Colossus, because I like to cry while I play video games, and the Dreamcast cult classic Rez. Those are it's those 3 usually in a different order depending on my mood.
those are all certified classics, though. I think they're all good choices, no matter which one you are in the mood for at that time.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to get my copy of Rez signed by Tetsuya Mizuguchi when I was at GDC, and I have like a first run copy of the Dreamcast version. It's like this one of the few like near and dear to my heart items of gaming, and I handed it over to him to sign, and he made it out to the author of the book that he was like kind of writing on top of. So I have a copy of Rez that is made out to John Waters, and I think it's like the most me item on the planet. I love it dearly. It's like, to John, thanks for playing. Like, it's so nice. I love it. I couldn't correct him. It's too perfect.
I have a friend and a coworker who's also been on the show a couple times, and she would go absolutely gaga to find out about that story. So that's really cool. She'd be very jealous.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of my listeners heard your gameography and probably got a little starstruck. I didn't. No, sir, because I'm a professional and not a total fangirl, but I was wondering if you'd be able to talk about your time at Telltale Games and some of the games you worked on.
Yeah, Telltale was such an incredible experience for me. I was at a point in my career where I was really thinking about what were players taking away from the experiences that I was working on, and what was that saying about the universe and world around us. And that was, part of my job search. It was sort of reevaluating, hey, what companies are out there that hold those similar values. And Telltale's catalog at that point was a lot of like the classic, like the first 3 seasons of Sam and Max and some Puzzle Agent. And to me, that really, those games really spoke to like having humor, having a kind of humanity present that I wasn't really seeing in a ton of other games. So when they had an opportunity, when there was an opportunity to join that team, that was like the easiest yes in the world. It was, such a unique opportunity for me as a LucasArts fanboy that I am, to work with some of these absolute just like stone cold game development legends. And I joined Telltale back in 2010, and my first projects there were Jurassic Park, and I maybe did like a tiny little bit of work on Poker Night 2. So I got to see that. Yeah, I got to watch Back to the Future be developed on by our other team at the time. So I got to kind of like have the fun version of like peeking in to see how that was coming along and playing builds along the way. That was really fun. But yeah, I got to see that studio transform from a traditional point and click adventure game structure to what I think more people would call like the Telltale game formula, or something that's a little bit more dramatically presented or cinematically presented. So, I mean, those ethos were always sort of there in Telltale, but I think with The Wolf Among Us, that like all of the team's strength was able to kind of rally and hone in on like, this is the experience that we can uniquely present to players and do something really different. And then after that, after that, I had an awesome opportunity to be the lead producer on The Wolf Among Us, which is probably, when people talk about my catalog of games, it's like, there's 2 games that are going to be always near and dear in my heart, and Wolf is absolutely one of them. And it was such an honor to work in that narrative universe. And introduce this, this quirky kind of offbeat DC Vertigo comic book to an entirely new audience. That's like such an awesome opportunity and responsibility in introducing people to these characters in this world. So I absolutely loved it. Yeah.
Forgive me for saying this, but it sounds like a lot of pressure as well, because not only like, and I'm not talking from like fans or like the general public that is obviously like very, very aggressive and very scary, but also pressure from like an IP perspective of like, cause like just having people above me from like, I've worked on videos for like FedEx and I've worked on videos for, like UPS and stuff like that. Most recently I've worked on videos for Ford as well. And it's kind of stressful knowing that like what you're doing is you're working on stuff that's representing a brand, right?
It's a responsibility. These people are trusting you with this thing that they've created. And this, in my case with games, it's like these worlds, these characters that are, it's what fans love about these experiences. It's what these creators have spent hours and hours, days, weeks, months, years honing in and crafting. So to have that opportunity to expand their worlds and interactive spaces, like it's, particularly as a producer, like that's something that is always in the forefront of my mind. It's like, how are we adding to what people already love about this experience, and what are we bringing there? Where are we bringing the players or participants that they haven't seen before, that they're just absolutely desperate to see? Like I think Telltale, we were really fortunate that the IP holders that we worked with, like, I'm going to say the ones that I got to work with directly were like just so awesome and so positive. The folks are, Robert Kirkman is an awesome creative collaborator. I didn't get to work one-on-one with him too much. I got to kind of adapt Walking Dead Season 1 to mobile. But our friends at DC Vertigo were absolutely awesome to work with. And whenever we had a really, kind of crazy idea, they were always there to at least hear us out, to say like, hey, is this something that's IP compatible? This is what we want to do. This is why we think it could be interesting to this story. And this is what we kind of either were referencing from the books that have already happened, or something that can be foreshadowing that's going to happen later on in the trades. They were like 100% like just totally game. And that's like, oh, what a rare thing that can be sometimes. But at Telltale, the odds were, it's like people came to collaborate with us. They kind of understood that. I say understood. I should probably say they respected what the studio really stood for and what values as storytellers that we were bringing to the table. Because if you're able to see kind of eye to eye with the creative storytellers, or to get the general vibe of these worlds, characters, stories, these are folks that will respect that and exercise some trust and allow you to take some swings, to do something a little different.
That's awesome. So I do want to switch gears though, because I played 3 days to Chicago this week, in preparation for this interview, but also because like everything I heard about it at QGCon sounded amazing. So despite the game being about 2 gay men, I did find it, like, as a trans woman who's bisexual, I still found it very relatable. There's a lot of elements to the game that just spoke to me as, like, a person who just turned 30, and, like, I don't hate video editing, but also, like, I'm, like, rethinking, like, do I want to try to pivot my career into something that's more, like, related to the podcast, or related to something else, like, journalism related, possibly.
It's a very specific, the main character takes place in a very specific time period of their life, where they've been out there, they've lived as an adult. I mean, we should probably get into the premise of it just a little bit, so it's not completely out there. But the main character, Aaron, who's the protagonist of the story, the player is kind of acting as or role playing through. They're a game artist. I'm not going to say super early into their career, but like not super deep into it either, and they're really figuring out for themselves whether this is what they want to do with the rest of their life. And in game development, in real life, in game development, there's a lot of no's. There's a lot of reasons to not do projects. There's a lot of reasons to give up. There's a lot of pressure, reasons to kind of not pursue the parentheses, the dream of it all. So I felt this was an interesting opportunity to look back at maybe some of the experiences I had firsthand as a game designer when I was at that age, but also some of the common threads that I would see with artists and engineers and QA and audio, everybody else in the game development team. Like, you kind of run into this moment where you think to yourself, like, all right, is this what I want to do? Is this it? Or is it time to shift and time to realign? And I know that when I present that as a binary choice at some points within the game, it might be very easy for players to gravitate towards one answer to the other. But I think that, like, that conscious choice is something that is so unique and so personal to all the people that I know have gone through that kind of experience. That I just wanted to make sure that was something that stayed within player agency, that was under player choice.
Well, there's the one part of the game, there's a couple parts where this happens, but I remember the first time it really presents you with the hard choice of, like, I think you present 4 options, but Aaron's boss calls him and says, like,
on vacation.
Yeah, on vacation, and says, like, wait, you need to get on the phone with me right now, and we need to solve this problem right now. I need you. I have nobody else. And you're given a choice of, like, kick the can down the road, say yes, like, all these options. And I was like, another visual novel I had played earlier this year, I played as if I was myself. And, like, my bosses kind of scare me, even when they're nice. I'm always a bit, like, to put it in strange terms, but a little submissive, right? Like, I'll just, if someone's got the money and they have all the power, I'm generally like, okay, whatever you want, like, no matter where I am. So I thought this time, well, maybe I'll say what I would actually want to say in this game and see how that plays out for Aaron, because I desperately also want to, like, live vicariously through Aaron. So I did pick, like, respectfully, no, we'll deal with it later. I didn't say a hard no, but by the end of the game, and the slight spoilers, so skip ahead maybe 30 seconds or so if you don't want the game spoiled for you, but I did at the end quit the job.
Yeah.
I picked quit.
Most people quit the job. In my play tests, I think it was like 90% of my players quit the job. And depending on your kind of school of thought in terms of narrative design, some people would see that sort of ratio and be like, that's not a very good choice then. But to me, I thought that was one of the most cathartic choices that I could offer players in that moment. And I think it speaks to, like, some of what I was talking about at QGCon earlier was the attainable fantasy. Human beings, most human beings on this planet, particularly ones in the United States, like, might have a suboptimal job at some point with a boss that will interrupt them on vacation. And it's like what you said, like, if you were role playing as yourself and had to make the adult decisions, you may not make that particular choice, but the attainable fantasy of it all is setting up a boundary and to say no, or to say, we're going to deal with this. We're going to kick the can down the road. We're going to deal with this later. Because I feel like that kind of choice is really powerful, because it says a lot about who we are and how we approach work-life balance, where our limits are. And it's a relatable dilemma for somebody to really think through in the moment.
Yeah, so actually, I did want to talk about attainable fantasy, and you explained it so eloquently at QGCon, and I was wondering if you could just kind of, like, talk about, like, because you mentioned at QGCon, this is one part I did get to tune in for before I was, as I mentioned in the previous episode, I was interrupted by someone entering my Airbnb, so I missed part of your talk, but you were talking about how a lot of video games, especially the ones, like, for example, that you made at Telltale, feature what you called unattainable fantasy and less mundane stories, things you can't do in real life. So this attainable fantasy is like the more mundane aspects of that. And I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah. So when I was working on 3 Days to Chicago, I knew I wanted it to stick out from what is other visual novels that are available on Steam. You can go on Steam, you can type in the word visual novel, you'll see a ton of stuff. Some really incredible games. You'll see a few games that aren't visual novels that get tagged as that in really strange ways. But for me, what I immediately saw was it's like, all right, there's some trends here that all of these games take place in high fantasy or high fantasy or low fantasy settings. These are settings where there's magic, there's lasers, there's space marines, there's wizards, there's orcs. Like, nothing wrong with those things. I love all of the above. But when I was thinking about, well, if I could craft an experience and I wanted it to stick out here, what would I do? The solution became to set the game entirely in reality, so that the only fantasy elements were sort of the promise of meeting somebody special for the first time, whether that's platonic, romantic, or someplace in between. That's awesomely up to player agency and where players want to go with that relationship. And being able to explore sort of those mundane things, or quote unquote mundane things, I discovered how important those are to people individually, how they define our lives, and how frequently we do get to kind of interact with like hope, fears, desires on our personal day-to-day basis. So the mission for 3 Days to Chicago really honed in or became about like, all right, what's the story that really focuses on that? And it's like, the setup that I use for Aaron is he's somebody who hasn't gotten quite over a breakup, maybe, or they might have some conflicted feelings about an ex, which feels kind of natural, but I feel like most people have maybe gone through something like that in their lifetime. They're at a job that is challenging, that's hard, that is time demanding. And where once they're able to disconnect themselves from their daily life and get on this train, they're able to sort of figure out for themselves who they want to be, what those boundaries are, what those goals, those fears, desires will consciously be. And it just so happens that they meet somebody along that same train ride that might share some of that need for self-reexamination in a way that could possibly lead to something romantic or platonic or something else.
Yeah, no, I found Aaron's story very relatable, because not only is like the job thing, but also like Aaron got out of a 5-year relationship and I just got out of a 10-year relationship. So when I was playing this game, I was like, and also Aaron is probably the only person on earth. I mean, he's fictional, or they're fictional. Yeah. But that likes their favorite Tarantino is Death Proof, and that is also my favorite Tarantino. I love that movie. The first time I watched it was with a friend of mine who actually became an incel, and he was watching it horrified, like, oh my god, these women are killing these men, and I'm like, go 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 go.
The soundtrack is so good. If I understand why it's Aaron's first choice. My personal favorite Tarantino movie, that's probably going to be Jackie Brown. But I think Aaron even says something about how like Jackie Brown is also really good. Yeah. Because I couldn't bring that up and not talk about that.
That's fair. Yeah. I mean, you can't really go wrong with I don't think Tarantino, the only Tarantino movie I don't like actually is his first one. Reservoir Dogs. I didn't like that one, but I like all his other movies, so.
Yeah, they have some interesting stuff. That interaction is totally set up to like seed what is something that I've experienced on a lot of first dates myself, which is like, I'm somebody who loves cult movies. I love spooky scare stuff. I love weird stuff. I love just like any movie. I will be more than happy to see it. But if it's like weird, offbeat, campy silliness or craziness, like that's definitely my thing. So I've had that question been thrown at me before, where it's like, hey, what's the last movie you saw? What do you think of it? And I like describe something that's absolutely crazy, and somebody will kind of look at me and be like, oh, okay. That's an interesting.
You know, you're being judged in that moment too.
Well, yeah, but it's about. I wanted the player to navigate that space and feel agency or responsibility over it. So that's why there's the choice between like 3 different Kurt Russell films. Like what is it? It's Escape from New York, Death Proof, or what was the third one?
I honed in on Death Proof immediately.
Tango and Cash,
right?
Because they're all a little quirky, a little cult movie-ish. But I wanted players to consciously pick something in that space and then get pushed on it, and a little bit later outside of I'm just going to watch a movie by myself and have a human moment with this person who may or may not have experience with either that genre or that particular movie, and just kind of explain like, why would you get into that? Or what do you get from these kinds of movies? That's a very, to me, that's a very real or very human interaction that I've been on multiple first dates and haven't always successfully navigated it. So I had some really good reference for screwing that moment up.
Well, I want to ask a couple more questions about 3 Days to Chicago very specifically. The first one is about the train jam. So in your QGCon talk, you talked about how actually, so for inspiration for this game, you took a train ride from San Francisco. I think in the talk you said it went to New York, but in the game it goes to Chicago.
Well, it depends on what ending you get.
Oh,
so
okay.
I get to ask you, what ending did you get? Where did you end up with Paul?
Oh, I wrote this down somewhere. Hold on. I wrote this down.
Oh, this is my favorite part of talking about that.
maybe I only wrote down the quitting the job part. Yeah, I think I just wrote down that I quit my job. But so I left Paul in Chicago. Like I didn't go to New York with him.
All right. So yeah, that's one of a few endings. There is a different ending that takes Aaron all the way to Chicago. And he spends time with Paul there for not really described, not really important, not an essential part of the story. But it's about. But you asked about like taking the train ride and actually going on this trip. I went into 2000. What was that? That was 2018, 2019. I forget exactly when I did the train ride. I was working at the time at a company that had a base in Oakland and Manhattan. And they had like hey, if you want to come visit New York, or people in New York want to come visit San Francisco, you can work out of the office interchangeably. And I said, yes, I will totally do that for a week in New York, and I'll crash on some friends' couches and make that super fun. But to get there, I wanted to kind of disconnect digitally from the universe. So I took the train from Emeryville, which is kind of Oakland, San Francisco, to Chicago. And then eventually Chicago to New York. And that's where all the photos in the game were, all the backgrounds, like all shot on location. So when you are at the Denver station, you are seeing the Denver station. When you get to New York, or when you get to Chicago, downtown Chicago, it's downtown Chicago, all that fun stuff. And what really resonated for me was, going back to the kind of the drive or the impulse in the project, I wanted to make something that would stick out from other visual novels on Steam. So I didn't want to do something that had a lot of illustrative qualities to it. I wanted photoed human beings if they were going to be up on screen. I wanted real backgrounds for any of the settings or environments. So really starting to take photos on this trip with that in mind as I was outlining the game. It it was one thing that would help the other. It would ping pong back and forth moment to moment on this trip, where I would have like an idea for, all right, I want this kind of interaction between these two characters, but like what's happening around them, or where are they when they're having this conversation, and how can we reflect the real world a little bit more authentically within a game space? That was just like, it just became the answer to go back to anytime I ran into like a narrative or a design dead end, was like, what would be the thing that would be most likely to happen within reality, and how can we play with that or subvert that from time to time?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the photos, because that's my next question. So first off, I thought the photos were a really cool touch, but the thing that interested me most about the photos was not that they were photos, but was that they were all color corrected to be like a bright blue and a bright red contrasting hue. And I thought that was really interesting. I was wondering what your thinking was behind that.
So one of the first stops that I made when I arrived in Chicago was one of the trains, like the local train stations, so like subway stations there. And I took this photo of what the platform looks like, and it has this like it had this pale blue tile with this kind of crimson tile together, and it looked so bold, it looked so colorful, so fresh. I took a photo of it, and my friend who lives in Chicago was like, yeah, they paint that. Those are the colors from the city flag. And so when I was like, oh, that's such an awesome way to try to get the idea of Chicago up on screen, even though in the game you don't necessarily see it on a moment to moment basis. But for somebody who might know that, but might be like a little hidden kind of tip or message to like, this is where they're going. This is where it's about. So color correcting all of that into being this kind of Chicago flag hued experience. That was also like a really big, a really awesome discovery in terms of keeping it in a kind of dreamlike or fantasy state, but still referencing and referring to the real world.
Well, I love all that insight, actually. That was way more than I was expecting. I thought it was just, because I looked at it and I was like, this is really pretty. Like, these colors shouldn't work together like this. This is very jarring. But like, I just was like, this is eye candy for me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I mean, again, it was all about like, how can this stick out? How can this be something that people haven't seen before or played before in a visual novel? And so like, I've seen some digital photo processing in a few visual novels, but I feel like the way that I was able to, I feel like I was like, all right, I feel confident that I can push it in this particular or this unique way with this kind of color system that sort of feels a little surreal or like helps boost the liminal qualities, the in-between space of the trip. So that when it's cold, it feels really cold, but when it's warm, it feels extremely warm. Like that was from more of a color direction or color system perspective. That's what that was hoping to achieve.
You also mentioned in your QGCon talk that the game was published by Midboss. And so for anyone who doesn't know, Midboss is an indie label publisher known for games like 2064, Read Only Memories, and Kitsune Tales. How did your game find its way there, and what was your experience like working with them?
So I've been working on 3 Days to Chicago when there was an opportunity to join the Midboss team on Read Only Memories Neurodiver. Doing some narrative design work and helping them out on that project. The original Read Only Memories is I love that game. It refers to all of these classic 90s anime, classic point and click adventure games. So like, that's in my heart and that's in my DNA. Like I really resonated with the project, and it was such a good, positive experience working with JJ, Casio, and Cade, that as I was also working on 3 Days to Chicago and getting that ready to pitch to developers or to publishers, I ran it by the Midboss folks and being like, hey, is this something that would be interesting to a publisher? And I kind of phrased it like being like, is this something that like anybody would be interested in. And Cade was really awesome. Cade Peterson was really awesome in saying, like, this is the kind of thing that we want to publish. This is the kind of thing that, like, we think is worth sharing with the world. And at that point, I had the script done. I had most of the, I'm going to say like 80%, 90% of the implementation or the coding done. And I was working on art assets. So it was very easy, yes, for them to say, like, oh, you're kind of already you're going to make this game anyways. Why not have some publishing support to get it out there to more people? So that was a really positive experience. Again, like JJ and Cade and Casio, like awesome people to work with, awesome collaborators. So yeah, really good to work with them on, particularly on this project, because it's something that is queer related, is telling a gay story, is about, you know, queer lives. And I think I'm really happy that they saw the value in that.
That's really sweet. I like that. So just kind of like tying it all together a little bit here. You worked on a lot of high profile projects, like stuff at Telltale, like we talked about earlier. How did it feel going from that to working on something that was basically all your own? Obviously pre-mid boss coming in.
So I specifically set out for this project to kind of be something where it was like, well, if push comes to shove, I feel comfortable I can do something here. I can push this across the finish line. I've worked on like some game jams and some group projects outside of work where, you know, the first few weeks or first few months, everybody's very excited. You're writing stuff, you're putting it into your initial systems. But like, you know, I wanted to finish this indie and I wanted it to be something that would be distinctly me in a way that's, you know, some of the other games that we've talked about, like there's always a little bit of myself in all of those, but like this was an opportunity to really say what I wanted to say and to tell a very different kind of story if that's what I wanted to do. And like, you know, it didn't take writing but a few scenes to really piece together the vibe or the atmosphere of it that would make sense for me. And why that would be something so different than some of the other projects I worked on. And this might sound a little cliche, a little silly, but like I have always kind of really gravitated to more experimental game spaces. My catalog of like IP-based games may not speak to that, but like in terms of development, in terms of like, well, what can we do with this IP or that IP? Like, those are always the things on my mind where it's like, oh, well, I played this like weird indie game or I played this other interactive art thing. Like, how can we do something kind of like that or brings people on that kind of journey or that emotion? How can we do that over here on this different hardware or this different platform or this different delivery? So, yeah, it really was something where having a background in more kind of experimental design really opened up some doors in terms of like, well, we can do it however we want to. There's that line in this is really cheesy or terrible, but like there's that line in Daft Punk's Giorgio Moroder song where he talks about once you free yourself of the concept or the limitations of what music should be, it can be anything or something to that effect. I forget exactly what he says there, but that's kind of what resonated with me. It's like, oh, the work that I'm doing, like that's going to be following some rules or some house, like some writer or designer house style. That's important to maintain, to be able to share and to hone in on one particular vision for a group project, like a more traditional, indie or AAA game. But like, over on 3 Days to Chicago, I could use that space to make all of the mistakes that I wanted to. So being able to chase after, be like, oh, I really want to do a scene that's like this, or I want this kind of choice, and I'm prepared for it to like not work according to these other definitions, but I think it can work over here. And I think that really opened my eyes in terms of being more willing to like not necessarily break rules, but re-examine conventions every now and then. That's always been that's been a really helpful thing for me, even with that project, but also just as a designer and producer past that project.
That's awesome. So just a couple more questions here. We're almost wrapping up, but I do want to kind of shift gears one more time to your time at gaygamer.net, because I would be remiss if I didn't get to like kind of pick your brain a little bit about games journalism, like queer games journalism from like 15 years ago.
Great. Oh boy. Gamegamer.net was like the place. I loved it. I was a reader that got recruited to write because I just posted a lot of the comments every day. Yeah, wow. When I was at Gay Gamer, I was able to cover things like GDC, E3, and PAX. Real talk, that was like the best way to ever experience PAX is with a journalist badge, because you get in that time extra when there's not everybody. You can actually get things done. It's really good. I don't know if they do that anymore. Do they do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually did sign up the podcast to go this year. They first off, they said no when they saw my follower account, but also then the Canada-US border thing happened and I didn't want to go anyway, but
you can't blame me there.
But they do still do that, to answer your question.
But that's awesome. They still do that. It's the best way to do the show. And if you have the ability to do that in the future, by all means, take advantage of it. It's great. That was a really fun way for me to reconnect with games as a player. Because at that point, I was doing a lot of design work and production work while I was at Nspace. And, if you stay in development long enough, it can be easy to kind of like detach yourself, like your professional self from your gamer self, like how you play games for fun versus how you look at games or examine games for work or for reference. And being able to write up a few, some news articles or reviews or some retrospectives on some games that I really care and I really love really deeply. That was such a great way to reconnect with it was such a good reminder of what made games fun for me. And what a great group of collaborators there. Wootini, Fruit Brew, Tiny Dancer, all these guys are like some of the best folks to work with, and like some of them are like still my best friends today. Pixel Poet, it was such a really unique time in games and like blog, right? This was like the height of blogs, right? Like kind of eventually it would be like into the podcast era, but like this was shortly after things like Kotaku or Joystick really blew up. So it was just awesome to have a queer voice within that world, or a queer perspective within that world. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, all these gay journalism sources, they come and go. Some of them are still around, but they're very inconsistent. And it's why I was told a couple weeks ago in a DM, you don't need to do this every week. If you need to take a break, and it's no, but nobody else is doing this right now, because someone comes, they do it for a bit, and then something happens and it goes away, and it makes me so sad. I was so in the closet when that website was around, I would never have heard of it. Sadly, yes. But when I came out in 2020, obviously all that changed, but I'm just glad to be here now. And
yeah, no, games journalism is hard. We talk a lot about games, game developers having a hard time. We are right now, historically, we're seeing we're still seeing layoffs. We're still seeing studio closures. It's not the greatest time to be a game developer, but even folks who are working in press, marketing, and journalism on the journalism side, it is really hard work with just crushing deadlines and a crazy amount of things to cover, and just the discoverability of it all. How do you connect with it? These are not super fun challenges. So I have a lot of respect for anybody who's going out there and being yes, these are the problems that I want to solve, or yes, I want to make sure that, queer perspectives or queer voices are being heard about games right now, because that's important. We're all playing them.
Yeah, for sure. If you have, yeah, just like that's why I wanted to speak to you at most. Cause like I heard your talk at QGCon, but the second I saw the gaygamer.net, I was like, the whole podcast could just be me picking your brain about like gay games journalism. And like, there's all these challenges. And like, I was like, maybe he has some answers.
I mean, I might be able to connect you with some of the folks that used to run the site who I just got to be a lovely contributor. I got to log in once a day and write up an article or write up a post and contribute in that way. But I know that like the running that site was not necessarily the easiest thing to do, or to find an audience, or to get sort of the inroads with publishers and developers to get those interviews or to get those connections. Like that's hard. It's hard won stuff. Those are not the easiest battles to take on. So luckily I didn't necessarily have to do that myself, but I definitely appreciate like the folks like really it was like Fruit Brood and Tiny Dancer. Like those are the folks that were really, really there and really pushing for that.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, I'd love any kind of connection you could provide would be amazing, but just getting to speak to you now is really cool. So I do have one kind of selfish question I want to ask that isn't podcast related. Are you working on another personal project, like a follow-up kind of game, not necessarily a sequel, but just your next 3 days to Chicago, so to speak?
Absolutely. I as soon as it was done, I was like, oh, I'm going to start work on the next thing immediately. My boyfriend at the time thought that was a really terrible idea. They were like, can you please take a break? How about we like at least like a month, like 2 months? No, I have the kind of brain that I'm gonna think about that kind of stuff all the time. So yeah, I don't want to say too much about it because it's still in like relatively early-ish state. It's something that I work on here and there. But if 3 days to Chicago is a reflection of my appreciation, my love for things like the films of Andrew Hay, or I'm going to say like shorter form interactive experiences like One Night Stand or Emily is Gone or something like that. This next project throws back to point and click adventure, dating sim, light RPGs that I really, really love, that I think are underrated and maybe not as appreciated as much as I hope they would be, but with a queer spin on it that usually makes a few people blush. So very excited to share more, but unfortunately not ready to talk about that quite yet.
That's fair. All the genres you mentioned are like, half the time I find a queer game, it's like in those but I think queer people really love those games. So I think you're checking all the right boxes, basically.
Yeah, it's easily the most ridiculous wackadoo thing that I've made. And so I think like tonally it will be like, I think 3 Days to Chicago is it's not the most sugary sweet or overly sweet experience. It's not like goofy rom-com stuff.
It's very down to earth and raw. Yeah.
Yeah. This might push me a little bit further into something that's a little bit more silly, a little bit more lighthearted. It's 2025. Everybody might need a little bit more of that right now. So it makes working on that being a little bit of a source of joy in a unique way. But yeah, it's really about reflecting some of my appreciation for adventure and interactive narratives that go kind of under-celebrated in my view.
Awesome. That's a really nice tease, and thank you so much for sharing that. I'm really looking forward to it. The second there's any information, I will be there day one. Like, I'm super excited.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear.
If the podcast is still around, I will cover it.
Awesome.
The only thing that'll stop me the podcast from being around is if I'm dead. So let's just stay alive, and the podcast will be here. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I want to ask if there's any final thoughts or anything else you wanted to share before we wrap up. You asked some really good questions. I'm like,
what are the things that I like to talk about that I want to make sure that everybody hears? Yeah, like we talked about attainable fantasy, and I think whether you're somebody who's making a game or you're just playing them, I think I would encourage your listeners to sometimes look at what they're playing and ask themselves, like, what does this say about the world that we live in here today? And examine if it's saying enough, if it's truly giving us what we need here, now, and this time. So just want to encourage folks to kind of look at games maybe a little bit, like, I don't want to say like maybe more critically, but also like, with a little bit more thought and intention, because it's worth it. But I'm going to guess that anybody that's listening to this podcast is probably well on the road there. So that's always good.
The thing about, I always compare movies to games is that movies are very passive and games are very active. But even sometimes, like you talked about, like playing games, you talked about games for journalism, playing games for journalism versus playing games for fun. I find when I play games for fun, I'm not thinking about them critically. But when I'm playing a game, when I know I'm going to be like when I played 3 Days to Chicago, I knew I was going to be talking to you about it. So I was definitely coming in with that critical eye. Whereas like when I go later and I'm going to play Super Mario Galaxy on Switch 2 later. Yeah. I'm not going to be thinking about that critically at all, right? So
you're like, you already know it's a 10 out of 10 Mario. Like, should be good, should be great. But no, I do appreciate that you talked about like the kind of the comparison between movie and games I wrapped up my QGCon quote or talk with a quote from Roger Ebert. Roger Ebert, back in his day, not the biggest fan of games, but I want to believe that, like, had they lived longer enough to see, the Mass Effects or Last of Us, or, if I'm going to be tooting my own horn, like Walking Dead or Wolf, like, if they were alive to see that or to experience those firsthand, I would hope that he would see how games are really similar to the empathy machine analogy of how he looked at film, where these are things that can show us what it's like to see the world through a different set of eyes. Not necessarily our own, not necessarily our own lived experiences, and they can show us like what it's like to be a different gender, race, socioeconomic background, all of these unique facets that make up the human experience. And I think games have only really scratched the surface on that, and I want to see more of that. That's kind of the aim for me.
That's a great point to end on. If people want to follow you on social media, where can they find you?
I think I'm at Schroyer.bluesky.social. I forget what order those things happen in, but yeah, Schroyer on Blue Sky. That's the best way to find me.
Well, thank you so much for all your insights. Thank you so much for joining me, and also for your QGCon talk as well.
Thank you. Thank you for playing. It's always important. I want to make sure I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I loved it. And also, for anyone listening or watching this podcast, if you are interested in 3 Days to Chicago, it's not that expensive. It's like $5 US or something like that.
Yep.
It was $6.49 Canadian. It was not that expensive. Like, that's full price too. So like, go play it. It's great. You won't regret it. I think it took me 2, 3, maybe 4 hours to play through. So
it's for most people are running around, depending on reading speed, 2-ish hours is where most people clock in. Not the longest thing on planet Earth, but like a good evening in. If you're looking for something you can finish over the weekend.
For sure. Yeah, go play it. Especially Canadians. It's a long weekend coming up. Go play it. Actually, when this podcast releases, it's like almost over, but still, go play it. I'm sure there's going to be a long weekend in the US as well for you. So anyway. But anyway, yes, sorry. I'm rambling now. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
And that just about wraps up this week's show. Thanks, True Avatars, for joining me for another episode of your Queer Video Game Podcast. By listening to the show, you are supporting queer-made content, which is more important than ever. If you want to support True Avatars, it would be really great if you could leave a comment, rating, or review on your preferred podcast platform. You can follow the show on Blue Sky, Twitter, Threads, TikTok, and YouTube under the handle @TrueAvatars, all one word, and on Facebook and Instagram under True Avatars. If you are watching on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe, as well as hit the notification bell so you can be the first to know when new content drops. I welcome you to check out the official website, trueavatarspodcast.com. That's all one word, trueavatarspodcast.com. On the website, you can sign up for the newsletter, where you can get exclusive news and updates on the show. Bye, True Avatars. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to speaking with you all again next week. Take care and stay safe.